Welcome to Module 1B. In this module, we will cover what is an entrepreneur and what is an intrapreneur, and we're going to define both of those terms. Here's our objectives for this module. You can read them on the screen. Basically, it's what is an entrepreneur and why do people become entrepreneurs? What kind of characteristics do successful entrepreneurs have? And lastly, there are some paradoxes that we will explore in this module. Here's the classic definition of an entrepreneur. A deal maker, somebody who came up with an idea, made it happen, orchestrated it. Again, a deal maker. There are four pieces: the creation, an idea, innovative, new, better, putting in a lot of time and effort. If you're looking for a 40-hour per week job, go get a job somewhere. Don't become an entrepreneur. It's typically a lot more than 40 hours. You wind up spending your evenings and portions of your weekends doing the administrative things that have to be done. The reading the mail, processing the bills, paying the invoices that you have to, getting out the billing your customers. And of course there are risks. Many startups fail. However, that's not the end of the world. You can either start over, assuming you have the financial ability to start another business, or you could go to work for a big company. Do big companies want entrepreneurs who have failed at starting their own business? Answer, yes. They are looking for entrepreneurial, innovative people just like everybody else. And the fact that your first business effort or even second business effort failed may not have been your fault. It may have been circumstances beyond your control. And of course, being an entrepreneur brings with it the rewards. Money is not necessarily the big motivator. A lot of people do it initially for that, but really the satisfaction of creating something and being your own boss frequently is more important than money. Here's the classic definition of entrepreneurship, the one that the textbook uses. It's a process, creating something different, something innovative with value. Question: who determines value? Answer: the marketplace, the customer. You may think you have the greatest idea in the world, but if nobody's interested in parting with their hard-earned money for it, it will fail. And history is littered with products and services that people just really didn't want. Then, of course, the second piece, as said before, it's the time and effort in it, the financial risks, the psychological and social risks. A young entrepreneur that I know who may be involved with us later in this course tells the story that when he first started his business, his girlfriend was concerned because he was working almost every evening. He was spending part of the weekends on his business and not having a great social life. And it was basically a choice between his business or his girlfriend, and his comment is, she's history. Again, if you succeed, you get the rewards, money, independence, and the satisfaction of doing something. Usually, a decision to become an entrepreneur is triggered by something. Something makes you want to do it. That may be retirement. People are living longer, sometimes retiring earlier, and starting a second career. And many times those people have some financial wherewithal. They have some savings, have some money put away or equity in their home, for example, that they can use to finance this new business and start a new entrepreneurial business effort, a new venture. Relocation. Sometimes not your own. Maybe it's your spouse or your significant other. Maybe that person got a great promotion with the company that they're with. Promotion, new job. Unfortunately, you're here in New Jersey and this new job's out in Denver, Colorado. So you, as the other person, says, you know what, I have to quit my job here, and I may not be able to find a new job easily out there, but you know, I've always wanted to start my own business. I've always wanted to do this. Maybe this is an opportunity to start that business. Of course, we've all seen in the newspapers and on television about layoffs and downsizing and cutbacks, and people, you know, that happens to people. Many of my clients in my business have come to me to start new businesses, and they are from places like Lucent or AT&T, where they can't find a new job, so they go off and become independent consultants, independent IT people, and start their own little company to accomplish that. And of course, many of you will be looking towards the completion of your graduate degree, and at that point, maybe you go directly into business for yourself. Some people do, some people don't. The textbook and most texts divide new ventures, startup businesses, entrepreneurial business into three categories. A lifestyle firm doesn't have a whole lot of growth. Think Pop's Delicatessen, Sam's Pizza Place. One location, no plans to open up a chain, no plans to open anything else. Maybe it's a restaurant, but again, just one location. No major plans for expansion and growth. My business is in that category. We have a nice business. It has grown. It probably will grow a little bit more, but I have no plans to add many more people. I have no plans to open offices in other cities or other states. Give me a nice income and a good lifestyle. Again, the stereotype is think, you know, Pop's Delicatessen. That was his life, and he was happy with it. Foundation companies create new stuff, and they are typically, or they're formed basically because they've created some new technology. Dr. Michael Recchi here at NJIT, the inventor of the technology for the smart gun, is in that category. He started a small company to own and protect that technology that he had invented. Later in the course, we'll talk about intellectual property and patenting and those kinds of issues and licensing. But for now, we're looking at just the category of this company. Typically, foundation companies are either bought by somebody or they license their technology to a large company. They frequently have high-tech ideas these days and do not necessarily have the financial ability to bring that technology and product to market directly. They have to look to a Xerox, a Hewlett Packard, any one of hundreds and hundreds of larger companies. Third category is what we typically think of as an entrepreneurial new venture. The textbook calls them gazelles. These are the Yahoos, the Googles, and years ago, the Microsofts of the world. What kind of skills do we need to be an entrepreneur? Well, here's the list. Typically, students coming from a technical background or engineering background, such as NJIT, are weakest with the two in the upper left-hand corner, that is writing and oral communications. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be able to communicate your ideas, your thoughts, your mission, your passion to your employees, to your customers, to your investors, to your creditors. You have to be able to say things and be understood. Again, both verbally and in writing. So it's a skill that can be developed. Strongest point for, again, people at NJIT and engineering and technical people, of course, is using the technology. And if you have a degree, an undergraduate degree from NJIT, you probably know the technology far better than I do. Other issues, you have to be a change-oriented visionary, be willing to adapt. Things are going to change as we get further into the course. We're going to talk about constant change and having to adapt to it. Inner control, up in the corner there, basically means giving yourself a kickstart. You've made phone calls all day trying to develop some new leads, some new prospects as customers, and you've heard the word no thanks, not interested 20 times today. You got to kick yourself and make 5 more calls. Maybe you'll get lucky. You have to get yourself out of bed every morning and go back and do it and keep working on it until you're successful. On the other hand, you also have to be stable. You can't panic when things get bad. You have to be the rock, the person who says, hey, don't panic. We've got problems. We can solve them. We will solve them. Here's a little different take on entrepreneurship. This comes from the C Student's Guide to Success, as you see at the bottom. Not everybody is an A student. Here's some ideas. You may have to pay your dues, work. Again, try to make as few enemies as possible and learn the skills that you need. The process of becoming an entrepreneur or developing an entrepreneurial effort has to overcome a lot of forces that people say, hey, this is not going to work. Don't know if you've ever heard the word window of opportunity. Window of opportunity basically deals with the time to get to market. One of the classic definitions, there are several variants on the definition of window of opportunity, but one of the classic ones is how long does it take from research and development to delivering a product or service. First customer ship. If that window of opportunity, the first customer ship, is too long, then you may miss the opportunity. Somebody may get to the market before you. You're coming out with a piece of software, an application. You've learned from your competitive intelligence that Microsoft is working on a very similar product. You have to get it out into the marketplace before Microsoft does. Otherwise, you may not have an opportunity to get market share. What kind of industries have short windows of opportunity? Well, one example is consumer electronics, changing all the time. Computers, constant upgrades. Last month or last year's model, not marketable anymore. Constant change, a small window of opportunity to get it out there, capture market share, and make some profits. There are 4 phases. Identify it and evaluate it. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk in some length in later modules about developing the business plan, figuring out what you need to do, and finally managing it. And we're going to go through all 4 of these phases in this course. Question: is the world waiting for your new product or service? Well, personally, I don't think so. It is my belief, and the belief of others who do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, is that for almost every new product or service idea that you can come up with, someone's already doing it somewhere, providing it, or somebody is providing a substitute for it, or people are doing without it and getting along just fine. So you may have what you think is a great idea, but believe me, you are going to have to convince people that they need it, that they want it, and that they are willing to spend their hard-earned money to pay for it. There are some strange paradoxes involving entrepreneurial efforts. The idea that you have may seem to have very low potential. And one of the things that during the course of this course and your development of your business idea and business plan, one of the things that I will not grade is whether or not this is a smart business idea. Because part of the problem is that I don't know what a good idea is. We will talk a little bit later about Federal Express and Fred Smith and the fact that he got a C on his business plan for FedEx, for Federal Express, because the professor thought it was a absolutely ridiculous idea trying to compete with the United States Post Office, that you couldn't do it. Those things happen. In a similar fashion, my daughter, when she was in college, did a business plan as part of a business course she had to take, and came up with a remote car starter that you could start your car from inside the house so that it would be warmed up when you went out there on a cold winter day. She got a C from her professor because it was an absolutely stupid idea. She'd love to get her hands on that professor and wring his neck. But again, you have to decide, the marketplace will decide. You're going to lose money first. You're going to pump money into the business. It will not be profitable. It's going to take longer than you think to be profitable, but you'll get there. You may have to cut back your lifestyle in order to make your business successful. You may have to postpone many of the things that you want. You may have to drive a junker car. And sometimes you have to fail, get up, try again, and make it happen. There are lots of unplanned events that happen. We're going to talk about that there are factors outside your control. Luck, for example, plays a part, I believe, in entrepreneurship. You have to be disciplined. You can't just let people go off and do whatever they want. There has to be some structure in the process, and we'll talk about that as we go into the course. And of course, the idea of the overnight success, the overnight wonderful company is really a fallacy. You have to start moving, you have to have a sense of urgency, but it's going to take more time than you probably expected. Again, one of the other things, there are a couple other ideas here that you don't want to be too organized. We'll talk about that later in the course. A book out of Columbia University called The Perfect Mess. That maybe you don't want to be too organized. Maybe you want to leave some room for new ideas, new practices. The problem of some of the management techniques and for example, Six Sigma, which is an excellent process for quality control, and the process of structuring and requiring things to be done in specific ways loses some of the creative juices that flow. That's why small companies that don't have all these best practices and all these discipline and orderliness, have been better. They have been able to come up with new ideas. And again, you have to work for long-term equity, not short-term profitability. And we're going to talk about that. This slide basically talks about the fact that things are getting shorter. The length of time that it took to get electricity and that. Does this necessarily mean that bringing stuff to market is getting shorter and therefore possibly a better window of opportunity, better marketability? I'm not sure. Sometimes yes, and one of the reasons is because there's more advertising, more media out there. You can get your message out much quicker than you could 50 years ago and reach a lot more people around the world. But some things still take time. Satellite radio has been around for a few years now. For a while there, it was a technology or a solution looking for a market. Why should people pay for satellite radio? Well, it's out there. XM and Sirius have merged. They have 18 million subscribers, but guess what? They're still not making money. It's going to take a while yet. The textbook uses the word intrapreneurship. Some texts call it corporate entrepreneurship. It's entrepreneurial effort within an existing company. The big companies have to compete with the little companies. The traditional, old-fashioned, as it were, corporate environment, everybody had a budget, you stayed within your budget, you had a set of goals, you tried to make those goals, you didn't particularly go out of your way to exceed those goals because they might adversely impact somebody else. For example, if you're in the sales department, you didn't necessarily want to sell 200 or 300% of what the goal was, because manufacturing might not be able to supply that much product. Manufacturing had established its plan and its supplies to sell a certain amount of material. Sales was supposed to sell that amount. Exceeding it by 2 or 3 times that number is not necessarily goodness. Follow the rules, follow the instructions, as we said in the paradoxes, and you report it to somebody who reported to somebody, and on up the line. Well, intrapreneurial teams are flatter. You may have heard the word skunkworks. Well, what was skunkworks? The term skunkworks comes from the 1960s with Lockheed Aircraft. Lockheed had been building fighters, bombers, and passenger aircraft. They suddenly got a contract from the government to build a spy plane, which eventually became the SR-71 Blackbird that sits at the forward end of the Intrepid aircraft carrier over in New York Harbor in Manhattan. Well, this was an entirely new idea. So what they did is they went off and just picked up a small team, unshackled by corporate restrictions, and they moved them out into the middle of the desert. It became known as the Skunk Works. And they did things in a highly classified, very free-form organization and built something entirely different. Well, newer examples of that include the Saturn automobile. American automobiles traditionally have been built where? In Detroit, correct? General Motors needed a car to compete with the Japanese. They needed a fresh new idea. So what did they do? They started up Saturn as a separate entity under the General Motors umbrella, moved it to Kentucky, I believe, either Kentucky or Tennessee. I believe it's Kentucky. Came up with a very short, informal design-to-build process. They worked as a team. They focused on the customer and customer service, experimented with lots of ideas, and they were free from the hierarchical lines of authority and reporting and management constraints of Detroit. They were off doing their own thing. One other aspect of it was that they were also free of the unions. Now, I happen to be an advocate of unions. I believe unions are good. However, union rules, like any other rules, tend to stymie innovation. We have to have so many people on this line. You can only do this kind of job. Every union worker has a job description, and it makes for a tough process. What does an intrapreneur or corporate entrepreneur look like? Well, he understands the technology and what's out there and how to use it. Of course, has a vision and a passion. We talked about, I mentioned before, the idea of being able to communicate, problem solving, pulling people along, encourages the teamwork, and builds a coalition. Why do you need a coalition of supporters? Well, chances are your project is going to be over budget and late, behind schedule. It's the way it happens. If you do not have a commitment from upper management and middle management, you may have a problem, because if you need to come back and say, hey, I know we said we have this out by January, but looks like we're not going to make it till March or April. Or if you say, yeah, we can do this, but I need another $5 million. If you don't have the commitment at the top level, they may just decide to cancel your project. Of course, identify the ideas, use the technology. We will talk more about that as things go on. Get people on your side. Of course, listen to the customers. Find out what the customers really want. And of course, one of the things that we're going to have to deal with, and we'll deal more later in the course on this, again, this goes back to one of the paradox slides, is how do we balance the idea of entrepreneurship and doing things differently and asking people to come up with new ideas and new angles on a product or service, and yet still conform to the product or service quality controls, the budgetary controls of the business, the standards that the business wants. For example, General Electric has a certain image it wants to protect. It doesn't want products going out there that don't work and can't be serviced and maybe vary from item to item. It's not an easy balance. It's not an easy balance, but it's something that has to be done. This course is entitled, at least by me, New Venture and Innovation Management. Some people just say New Venture Management, but I think it's a little bit more than that. The question is there a difference? Well, new products, new services can come from either new inventors, entrepreneurs, or corporate entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs that we've just been talking about. And basically the question is if you've got an idea, do you start a new company, or do you do it within the existing company that you are? Well, here's a little flow chart. Creative employee may work for a big company, be a corporate entrepreneur as opposed to the independent person. We're going to talk about feasibility plans and is it going to work? If we have an idea, do we want to protect it? As I said, later in the course, we'll talk about intellectual property, patents, and other forms of protecting it. And we come up with either a new business plan if we're on the entrepreneur side on the left of the chart, or an internal product or business plan if we are within the corporate environment. If we are starting our own little new business, we got to find some startup money, set it up, and start the new business venture. If we're in the corporate world, in an existing corporation, we go get some backing from upper management that I talked about, commitment. Maybe we set up a new business unit within that existing corporation. Maybe it's a Saturn, maybe it's just a new product line. But many large corporations are organized in business units, and you start it. But then you have to take a look, do you have the resources, the capital, the equipment, the distribution system to sell the product yourself? If yes, go off and start a new venture, produce it and sell it. If not, maybe you want to sell that idea or license it to a big company. Conversely, if you're on the corporate side, on the right side of the chart, again, is this something that the existing company will produce and sell? If yes, does it fit within the product areas that are traditionally of interest to the company? Or is this an entirely new thing that has nothing to do with the existing products that the company sells? If it's the latter, if it's an entirely new area, totally different from what the company's been selling, maybe you want to spin it off, start a new venture. The existing corporation can still be the owner of it, but essentially make it its own little company by itself. And you'll see, so you see that they're really, really interrelated. Okay, in our next module, which is module 1C, we're going to do a little feasibility test. Nothing major, just to see if we look at an idea, does the idea make sense? Is it worth pursuing? Look forward to you joining me with the next module. Thank you.